dust.
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
What's the
Everybody
procedure,
stay calm.
everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay calm.
Wait.
Everybody calm down.
Ooh, yikes, this game really flopped on release. Should I even play it? Is it worth me spending the money, or hell, even the camera time? A lot of people seem to think it's not worth giving this game the time of day.
Listen. I will not be the weak link.
Okay, so first and foremost, let me say that what you just saw was strictly for comedic purposes. I have no knowledge of the work environment within Creative Assemblies, and with that being said, greetings all and welcome to what I'm bringing forward as a personal reevaluation of Total War Pharaoh. Now firstly, I want to be clear that this is strictly opinionated and comes from a bit of a bias from prior Total War games. Secondly, while I am familiar with these other Total War games and have watched a lot of content of them, I'm only actually have spent time in Rome 2, Warhammer 1, 2, and 3, which is my most played, as well as a little bit of Napoleon. I have a lot of fantasy background, which means I'll be drawing a lot of these comparisons to Warhammer 3, which is CA's most recent fantasy game, and as I said, the game I have the most time in. I also knew that when Pharaoh released, it was rough for both the community and Creative Assembly. So, before I bore you with too much nitty-gritty context, we're going to start this evaluation with the first noticeable thing, in my opinion, about any Total War game, being the graphics, music, and general ambience. Alright, so immediately I'm already in love with the visuals and music. I'm really feeling that ancient Egypt vibe, and while I can still see what appears to be like some ray tracing graphics if you really know what to look for, the visuals look great. I will say though the model of what I'm assuming is Ramesses seems to be breathing with an awkward animation, looks a little forced, but otherwise it's just me being nitpicky. I know that the art of animation can be difficult, and so can wearing armor. For all I know, this is a very accurate depiction of what breathing with armor looked like back then. Otherwise, the main menu music and the ambience already exceeds that of Warhammer 3.
When my father, Ramses II, reconquered the Sinai Peninsula, he made two things clear. First, our empire is built upon the stone and bronze found there. And second, we must never let it slip from our grasp again. Ramses, son of Setnacht, is yet to cut his lock of youth, yet his martial skill and leadership surpass that of men twice his age. He guards the Sinai Peninsula at my behest, leading his loyal Magi against all who would threaten our people. One such threat descends from the north, where the rebellious Canaanites are a constant thorn in my side. However, Ramses has stamped out their defiance at every turn. He accrues victories with ease, and his pride grows with every triumph. Such arrogance is not unfounded. The boy has wreathed himself in glory, anointing his khopesh in the blood of Egypt's enemies. Yet, I worry for the royalty that runs in his veins. When he inevitably seeks the throne of Egypt, Will the gods help him grasp it? He claims to bear divine favor, and even I cannot deny an air of destiny surrounds him. Perhaps the gods call on young Ramses to match the greatness of his namesake, and one day roll over all of Egypt. Ramses, I'm sure, believes so.
Alright, so the first thing I want to say about the campaign map, when entering the campaign, I greatly appreciate how much context we're given by SETI. I'm a huge Warhammer nerd. I'm not a big ancient Egypt nerd. I know absolutely nothing about the ways and the world of ancient Egypt, not to mention the Egyptian gods. Like, I know Ra and Anubis, I mean, they're kind of the famous ones, but knowing who Ramesses is in relation to this dynasty of Egypt, getting kind of a lay of the land at the very beginning, it's so much more than what Warhammer 3 provides you at the very start. If you do one of the campaigns, one of the suggested campaigns by the devs, I'm strictly talking about the Empire with Karl Franz here, you get one voice line from Karl Franz.
Now is the time, men of the Empire, to unite!
Telling you that it's time for the men of the Empire to unite, and it just kind of throws you into the middle of the Empire. If you have no prior knowledge of the Warhammer universe, you have no idea where you're going, what you're doing, what you're supposed to do, where you're supposed to go, who you're supposed to attack, because there is like some destined enemies in there. But other than that, love the context that this is giving me. Visually, I'm loving everything I'm seeing. My only gripe is maybe that the Fog of War clouds are a little blocky, and the grass might be a little low detail, but I get maybe they're trying to save resources so that this works on other computers. I get that, that's fine. The world itself feels alive and historical at the same time. The swirly clouds up there in the sky gives it that etched on the wall feeling, very ancient Egypt, and I greatly appreciate that little touch. It gives it that slight reminder that this is still just a game. But the trees and the visuals, the buildings, the water looks absolutely amazing. Alright, so hopping right into the campaign, it looks like it's giving me a basic character screen and just some key concepts of how this game is played. I see I got some faction buildings, faction units, commands, and a court system. I see these outposts, worship, apparently I can select some gods. That seems interesting. Gotta, favor those gods. I have some native units. There's terrain and weather in this game. That's cool. Titles. I'll have to look into that for further detail. The dynasty mechanic that I've heard so much about. There's some royal traditions that I'm supposed to follow, from what I understand. And then I have to maintain my legacy. Alright, from here, let's move on to... I'm kind of voicing over as this goes back. I think I was clicking on the characters to listen to voice lines. I want to hear the voice acting.
My dynasty will be eternal. I am unstoppable.
Loving the voice lines so far. Alright, so here's the main character sheet. It looks like I got some ancillaries, so I can put some items on like you can in Warhammer. I like that. I got some stats that I'm very familiar with on the left, melee attack, melee defense, and a bunch of other things that I'll just look at later.
No one rules me.
I guess that is supposed to be my first army to attack in all Warhammer campaigns, and right now I just kind of want to look at the world a little bit more. Just listening to the music kind of reminds me of some of that stuff you would turn on to like help you go to sleep at night. The tactical map looks great, unjumbled and unclogged up like it is in Warhammer 3. I don't know how many times I've zoomed out even further on the campaign map and I just immediately zoom back in because I'm like, it's just too much. I can't discern anything. After looking at my notes, there's one thing that I want to rehash, and that's the voice acting. I haven't provided too much footage of any voice lines yet, as I don't want to spoil too much of the game. But something that I feel that Creative Assembly has always been on top of is hiring and properly utilizing excellent voice actors. It's a major part of why I love the Warhammer games, and it seems that they brought their A game to Pharaoh Dynasties as well. I hope we continue to see this in future Total War series games. The next thing I want to point out is how diverse the economy system is. You have 5 basic resources to manage to prevent your armies from just falling over. Whereas in Warhammer, you usually have the one, which is gold, or favor if you're playing some of the Chaos factions. Now, there are some factions that don't follow the common rules of the Warhammer economy, looking at you, High Elves. But some other factions also have different means of running their currencies, like the Chaos Dwarves. I think, however, with historical games, it's better that every faction has the same, if not similar, economies, as it's all the same technology, technological era / biological types. We're all humans, we all use the same stuff. With Pharaoh, I like having 5 resources. It's not too much, it's not too little. But we're going to go through these resources real quick, starting with food, which appears to be the most basic as well as the basic requirement for not having your legacy just collapse. You need food to supply your people so they don't starve, so you can produce a workforce and continue to build your empire. Stone, which is used for some building construction, is the main resource for empire growth. Wood seems to be the primary resource to build up your economy buildings, so having a strong revenue of wood is good for those that like to have that more investive mentality when it comes to economy management. Bronze, very simple, used for paying the expenses of units that aren't basic farmers, so you want to get those, next level tier of spears or swords, maybe even some archers. You gotta pay for the weapons with bronze. And finally, gold. The famously coveted mineral used by all their self-proclaimed kings and bandit lords, used for making payments or maintaining the highest tier of military personnel. But the one thing I do like about Pharaoh is that with these 5 resources, you can trade all of them for another. For example, you don't need gold to trade for stone. You can purchase stone from any other lord or playable faction or minor faction for that, using wood, bronze, or food. It truly is the system of trade. So as you play Total War Pharaoh Dynasties, you'll be offered this instance called an ambition. These are kind of the game's way of giving you a short-term goal that will give you a really nice reward. Playing through this Ramesses campaign, I've just been offered my first one, and as you can see, I can either conquer a region and get 2,000 food, win a battle for 1,000 food, 50 bronze, conquer a region focused on producing gold, and get a nice lump of change of 500 gold, which is pretty nice. I'm going to go ahead and get the food one, because I believe one of the closer regions to me is a food-based settlement, and it is. Okay, now looking into the more in-depth campaign mechanics of Total War Pharaoh is these buttons underneath your economy tree. First one being your victory objectives. Obviously, with every Total War game, for you to beat the game, there are objectives for you to complete. It's mostly just conquering the world, and as you conquer more and more, you'll complete the 3 objectives: the minor, major, and ultimate. Next to the victory objectives is your royal decrees, which is essentially your tech tree. As you progress through this, it will help your economy, your military, or your civic status. It actually gives you a legend of what each icon represents. The blue, rectangular gem is civic, the round one, the yellow, is economy, and the triangular red one is military, as I'm sure you can see up there. So some of these, if you're not really big on reading, you're just like, I want a better military, red click, or I want more economy, yellow click, stuff like that. After that, you have diplomacy. Pretty standard diplomatic stuff with all Total War games. You can do non-aggression pacts, request military access, go into a DA or an MA. You can ask about Confederation, go into a peace treaty if you're at war with them. There's also 2 things that I haven't really seen here before: legitimacy support as well as find marriage matches. So, if I can imagine this correctly, marriages will help you. Oh, it's a filter. Okay, so yeah, you click on the filter and it's like, these are the factions that have potential brides for your character to marry, and thus continue your legacy by producing an heir, stuff like that. But we're going to go ahead and initiate some diplomacy with this guy.
Ramesses, I'm sure this meeting was fate.
I'm sure it was too. Actually, I'm not going to do that because we already have a lot of stuff with them. We're going to talk to this guy.
Do you see this deal as part of your destiny, Ramesses?
Not necessarily, but whatever, Wenefi. So yeah, non-aggression pact, and it does give you base values of these. So obviously, I'd have to pay this guy off or offer him something that he couldn't refuse to match these deals, and I like that it actually shows the value before you click it. That's something not other Total War games do. So there are also two different types of barters here. I can do a barter agreement, which is like just a trade agreement in Warhammer. I can give him resources in return for resources over a certain amount of turns, or I can do a single barter. Hey, I will give you, I don't know, let's say 2,000 food. He likes that for... I'm trying to type in 100 wood, but he doesn't quite have 100 wood, he only has 98. Another thing on this screen that you can see is that on their side, you can see X's and check marks next to certain resources. If there's a red X, it means they are currently abundant in that resource. If it's a green check, it means they are in short supply. Typically meaning that if you offer them these resources, you can usually get a pretty good trade in whatever you're trying to get. I do like the single barter system. It's a nice way to just quickly get a resource and not really have to deal with that faction for an extended period of time. Obviously, you can break agreements here, you can join war, declare war, and what does this legitimacy support? I can just offer legitimacy or demand it. That's pretty neat. Alright, let's get out of the diplomacy tree here. After diplomacy, there's the local deities, which is just the gods tree. Currently, as Ramesses, you default to Ra, the god of the sun, or the Egyptian god of the sun, excuse me, but here you can look at all of the gods. Now, from what I also have been told, there are hidden gods that you unlock as you play the game, but there is a lot. Ra, Ptah, Horus, Anubis, Isis, Set, Amun, Osiris, and Thoth for all the Egyptian ones. And we got Yam, Moloch, and Baal, El, and Asherah for the Canaanite ones. You have Kumarbi, I think I'm saying that right, excuse me, Karunta, Shaushka, Arena, and Tarhuna. I'm sure I'm butchering the pronunciations of these, please forgive me. For the Mesopotamian, you have Asher, Ishtar, Inshushinak, that's one, Marduk, and Ninurta, who is actually the one I'm playing as in my co-op campaign with my friend Vileurple. Check out his channel in the description. For the Aegean, which is essentially the Greek, Poseidon, Zeus, Ares, Apollo, and Aphrodite. All of these gods provide different bonuses. I'm just going to quickly look over some of the Egyptian ones, the two I currently have access to. As you further devote yourself to these gods, and you do this by producing the religious building types, they're the purple ones in the buildings tree, you can start to get benefits, and they will increase as you increase your favor with them. Also with this is you can devote a general to them, and that army will receive some temporary bonuses. Like, for example, if I had tier 2 for Ra unlocked, I could devote Ramesses to him, and the army would get 12% melee attack and 18% melee defense for all melee infantry, which is pretty nice. Let's go look at Ptah real quick. So recruitment cost, happiness, and food, and it looks like more resources from raising and raiding. Also, the devoted general will get 12% charge bonus for that army. This seems a little more economically focused, or more civically, I guess. Having your armies not cost as much to recruit is nice, and you can also go out and raid territory that you may not necessarily feel ready to conquer yet. Having happiness and more food is always nice. Making sure you're, staving off rebellions and whatnot. Now we're going to go into the court system. So this is...
May the wisdom of court guide us to glory.
Yes, Pharaoh. So the court system is like further into the diplomacy. There's plots, intrigues, there's a new currency called regard, and you can do things with your quests that will either cause you to gain legitimacy or lose legitimacy. There are court actions. So for example, let's see, am I even in here? I do not see Ramesses on this list, so we're just going to pick the treasurer, for example. I can perform an intrigue. Now I can conspire with him. Reveal a plot of yours to a faction to increase the plot's level, which improves chance of success. So yeah, I can conspire with them. However, that would cost me 20 regard, but I have 0 with the treasurer. Now I can gossip, which is a free action. I can do it every turn. With Ramesses, I believe you have 2 court actions per turn. You can see what your current available court action is up top. But gossiping is just a simple way to gain regard. You can assist them for gold to instantly gain 120. I can make a request when I have higher regard to get a free embezzlement plot or get some builder wages, which I'm actually not sure what this is. Ensure that a single building category will have its cost reduced by 25%. This effect activates on the next turn after being set and will last for 5 turns. That's pretty nice. And then you can plot against. You can threaten, you can discredit, you can blackmail, and if you watch my Mesopotamian co-op playthrough with V, there's even some things like assassinate and embezzle, and there's another one that I can't think of, but there's more diplomatic options that you can do depending on which faction that you play as. Ultimately, you want to get the highest legitimacy so you have the biggest say for the throne. And then as the court actions progress, you can discover plots either from one entity to another, plots against you. You can see your plots against others, and you can thumbs up or thumbs down them as they appear to benefit you in whichever way works the most. Like, let's say you're trying to be all friendly with the first commander for whatever reason, but the High Priest of Amun has like a discredit plot against the first commander. If you get that plot revealed to you, either through gossip or just it is revealed, you can thumbs down that plot to lower its chance of success, that way helping your friend. A lot of extra diplomacies in this game, and I'm loving it so far. So Power of the Crown. This is something that you unlock after it's like 2 years in the game. It's 2 or 3 years, which is like 6 turns. It's not a lot, but this is where you will pick essentially a path to follow. On this one, I picked the traditional Egyptian path versus forging my own path and pretty much making it so I fight for the throne. I don't really have the screen to look at. This will be for you guys to determine because it's different for every region of the world that you play in. And then moving on from this is we have our Ancient Legacy, which apparently I have something to do in here. So choose an ancient legacy to follow. Each provides different boons as you follow in the footsteps of the great leaders of the past. This choice will mark your rule and cannot be changed once selected. So on my Mesopotamian playthrough, there were 2 to pick from. One was... I actually forget what the other one was, but I know my buddy V took it. I ended up taking up the lawmaker system, which allowed it for me to write permanent laws into effect that essentially worked as like another tech tree to either increase my civic and economic capabilities or my military lethality and effectiveness. So there's 4 here. I like personally the idea of the merchants. I'm going to read more into this. I can do trades. It reminds me, just at face value, the caravan system from Warhammer. I'm going to go ahead and select it and just see what happens. Yep, that looks essentially what it is. Let's select Mat Asur and prepare your cart. Sure, what's some figs, some stone. And I'm actually not sure what I will get in return. It will cost me stone and food. It's light on items, add more so you can make a good profit with your expedition. Okay, I'll just add a bunch of stuff, you know, why not? Can I just add everything? I probably can't afford that one. That's a lot of stone. Let's just go ahead and do that. Cheap caravan to see what happens. The expedition will travel for a few turns for reaching the bizarre destination where you'll be able to trade. Neat. Okay, so yeah, it's similar to the caravan system from Warhammer, but not an exact copy. Alright, so now the ruling family. There's not a lot going on here right now, but if you get adopted into a dynasty, you can see who's the heir of that dynasty, who all is a part of the dynasty. This is also where you'll see your family tree. Ramesses is currently unmarried and has no heir to his name. But should I get married, which I can arrange down here, you can eventually start to accrue a family. And then you have the faction summary, which is pretty much the starter screen, but it shows you your status and the records, which there isn't a lot to do here. I have been kind of skipping turns to try and progress some of the campaign mechanics that become available as you progress throughout the game. Finally, the field of battle, the place where you can live out your fondest movie moments or relieve some pent-up aggression towards an enemy that just won't die. It's the place that really makes or breaks any Total War game, and so far with what I've seen with Pharaoh, it certainly made it. I am, however, going to break this up into some goods and bads, just to help me keep my head on straight while I read through my script. So first off, one of the good things that I've noticed in this game is that units have a new mechanic called lethality, which is the unit's chance to just outright kill an entity. I like this because it helps prevent those moments where, something like a 15-pound javelin hitting someone dead in the chest really should have just killed them, yet it didn't because of some funky damage numbers. A bad thing that I'm not too fond of, and I use the word bad lightly, is that the units don't seem very alive until you select them. They give this really cool battle chant when you do, but I kind of like the idle hootin' and hollerin' that you hear in the units in Warhammer. I do hope they bring this back in Pharaoh. Though I understand if they don't, as this game's ambience seem to be a little more peaceful than that of Warhammer. Pointing out the obvious, a major difference between historical and fantasy games is that your general/leader is just a guy and can die to a random stray arrow or a javelin or a sword slash. I really had to change my mindset playing this game. I couldn't just throw my lord into combat, which makes sense, and frankly I think I enjoy this more. You get to avoid the silly single entity doom stacks that you see in Warhammer. Going back to field ambience, the battlefield really started to feel more alive when combat started. There was more yelling and distant cries of pain or bloodlust. In a custom battle I did notice a couple silly animations, but nothing game-breaking like the spinning Sisters of Avalorn in Warhammer. One thing that I will miss while playing Pharaoh is the sheer mass of cavalry charges. While cavalry is strong in Pharaoh, there's just not as many units in the game as there are in some other Total War series games. Granted, I understand that this style of combat was not really indoctrinated into warfare in that time period, but all the same, I will miss it. That is something that Warhammer will always have. Now to talk about some battlefield mechanics. The most noticeable one for me was weather. It can drastically affect any fight. If you've been watching my co-op playthrough, for some reason a lot of our battles have been in the rain, which seemed a little uncharacteristic for a game, mostly based around the desert, but I'm not complaining. I love the Petrichorus glory seeking. Also, having weather is a nice substitute for no magic, which for any experienced Warhammer players out there, you know how oppressive magic can be. Now the battlefield is strictly set for formations and positioning, perfect for any Sun Tzu-loving generals out there. It seems that weather mostly negatively affects the battlefield. I haven't seen any positive effects. Typically you want dry weather if you have lots of missiles, or if you're fighting missiles you want to fight in the rain or fog. My main point being that I do like how it affects the entire battlefield and not just one team. I do understand that there are some mechanics where your army will be less affected by weather, but obviously that's a reward for experience, and I like seeing that in these games. So after all of the review I've done of the game, I gotta say, and no, this is not sponsored, I am actually looking forward to playing this on my own time, off camera. I've never really played a game where the diplomacy is as strong as it is here, and I'm curious about forging alliances that actually stand the test of time, starting my own dynasty or heck even ending a few. I've only looked at Mesopotamia and Egypt, not to mention the modern day Turkey or Greece factions that are available to play, all who also have their own unique campaign and battlefield mechanics and legacy trees to progress. I really think CA brought out the silver platter with this one, and they certainly had us in the first half. I don't think anyone expected Pharaoh to be an excellent game, and I'm pleased to have been surprised in that regard. So thanks for listening, watching, and or commenting. I hope you enjoyed at least some part of this. I know that the meat and potatoes of this video was probably not all that thrilling and rather monotonous, so if you made it this far, leave a comment mentioning, purple camels or something silly like that. If you want to see more, make sure to stop by my channel on Tuesdays for a live stream, or check out my buddy Vileurple in the description, who is absolutely on fire right now with producing Total War Pharaoh content. If you want live updates on releases, or just want to join the community, we have a Discord where you can meet with other Total War enthusiasts who are more than happy to collab or just talk, and lurk. I do that a lot myself. Anywho, thanks for chiming in, and I'll see you all on Tuesday.
Your general has fallen.